upstairs that you would come in on your first entry. On this side is the boys' side, always. On this side is the girls' side, always. So upstairs would have been the dormitories. This main floor is mainly offices and lounge areas where students could relax in the evenings. Downstairs, dining room and kitchen, showers, that type of thing. Okay? That's basically the setup of the school. We can't go upstairs. The police are up there and they don't like us wandering through their space. And there's quite a bit of stuff stored downstairs, but if you want to go down there, we can. But we usually start off over here. So let's go down into the main room over here. We do have some displays here in the hallway as well of historical items and stuff. Like here will be this room. And this is our main room dedicated to the residential school era of what some of our students went through, what I went through. And actually this school here in Portage is actually known as a pretty benign school, okay? It doesn't have the reputation of Brandon or Bertle. They were much harsher, but setup was the same. I'm pretty sure this used to be the boys' lounge area, this room in particular. We've set up here because these rooms were the space, obviously. A lot of our displays and stuff, if you want to go around and look at them, we have some dedicated to the Glee Club, and they're actually going to try and get together and perform this September 30th. So some of the members of the Glee Club, we've contacted quite a few of them and their old director. So they're going to be putting on a performance this September 30th, along with everything else. Now, if you look at some of the memorabilia here, we have some of the examples of the strapping that we used to use, that we used on us, rather. I actually had one in Brandon because I escaped from our wardens and went swimming when I shouldn't have. And I got strapped on the hand. Some other students get strapped much worse. We have the smaller straps all the way to the larger straps that were used on the older students. Yep. We have a part dedicated to Iona Winas and the students who died in that plane crash who were returning from this school back to their homes up north, so you can look at that. We just go around if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. My school experiences were when I was quite young. I went to Brandon when I was in grade 1, stayed there up until grade 3. Very strict environment. We woke up to bells, went to sleep to bells, locked doors behind us, bars on windows, you name it. And then I was home until about grade 7, grade 6 or 7, 6 I think, when I was sent to Bertle. And that was a very harsh school as well. Yeah. And I ran away from that one.
Are you a member of Long Plain?
I am a Long Plain member. We're currently in the process of planning for our September 30th. We had a couple of meetings so far. It's quite the process, quite a busy time for us over the summer months. And a lot of us are saying, like, we're getting quite old, like we need some young people here to take over the reins of this because it's getting really quite hard for some of us. So, yeah. Some of us has mobility issues, you know.
And with your involvement with the museum, are you part of the curatorial?
I'm on the board of directors. Lorraine is our director. Lorraine Daniels is over there.
Okay, so
If you want to speak to her.
but you're on the board?
I am on the board, yeah. There are about 5 or 6 of us on the board. We meet, we usually meet every couple of months, but like I said, this is a busy time of year for us, so we have more meetings every couple of weeks now.
Okay.
This is the town 1970, and then this is the principal.
There are other rooms. One is dedicated children who were missing and were found.
Reported this, and they went to California and went to.
And we have donations that are given to us, that donated to us and for display, so we have to make room for those, like shuffle things around all the time. But it's really ongoing work. It's really, and they only have the one director. She's just recently gotten an assistant, so it's quite a job. Yeah, and then tours, everybody wants to tour, like, we have people who just visit and they want us to see the place. We try to accommodate, but it is time consuming and like I said, lots of people go. I'm 70.
Tables and a room set aside for the staff. So in the staff room, they would have all the beautiful dinnerware and china and cutlery and
Good meals.
excellent meals compared to what we had.
Yes.
And candles. And then on the other side, in the dining rooms, we were all in one big room. Boys would be on one side, girls on one side, and these are the type of plates that they would give us, and so they weren't as fancy as the staff. And then for every meal, for every event, we all had to line up. This is in Brandon. I went to Brandon my first year, grade 2, and this is how we had to line up. For everything that was happening. And yep, that's where I experienced my first strap. I was 7 years old, and we were told to line up and make sure our lines are straight. So as a child, you know, you think as a child, and of course I stepped out to see if the line was straight, and the supervisor saw me and called me out and received my first strap in Brandon. And so I learned to really be on best behavior after that. And at the end of the year, I was given an award for being on best behavior, because I lived in fear all my life, the whole time I was there, because I didn't want to get a strap. There, I went to 3 different residential schools, and 5 years in Sand Bay, which is Roman Catholic, and 1 year in Bertle. And Sand Bay was the worst for me, because I witnessed a lot of abuse with my 2 siblings. And during that time, one of my younger sister was forced to eat her vomit. She had vomited into her bowl of cereal, and the nun stood over her and made sure she ate the bowl with her vomit. And I sat across from her and watched this happening, and I recall I was afraid to look up because I didn't want her to see my tears. And I remember the tears falling into my cereal and eating my tears with my cereal, and so she received a lot of physical abuse, mental. And another incident that I recall was they had beat her up so bad, and they had hid her in the dorm in an infirmary, and she was black and blue and bruised. And my oldest sister that was there with us, one of the nuns took her upstairs and snuck her upstairs to go and see my little sister. And she was lying in a fetal position, and thought they were coming to finish her off. And we talked about this not too long ago. You know, she could have been one of them that never made it home. So a lot of the kids in the residential school witnessed that. They had brought her down after the swelling had kind of went down, and she was black and blue, bruised from the beating, and they brought her down to the main dining room where everybody was, and used her as an example that if anyone didn't listen, this is what was going to happen. So I always learned to stay under the radar, to stay out of the way, out of harm's way. But you know, that stays with you for the rest of your life, and it affects you throughout your lifetime. And it takes a lot of therapy and counseling to get through. Even though you're a witness, you still feel the effects of seeing that, and you know, it takes a lot of work to get to where I am today, because I've done my therapy, I've done my counseling, and if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to work in a place like this, because a lot of people ask me sometimes, how can you work there? But it's, you know, it's taken faith as well too, my faith, and just wanting to help people to get on their healing journey. And I think you see a lot of the people, the homeless people, the addictions, the incarcerations, you know, that all stems from the residential schools. And there's so much healing that needs to happen in our communities. And hopefully that we're all going to walk towards reconciliation. We still have to educate the public about what happened, what had transpired in the schools, to reveal the ugliness of the residential schools, and to work towards reconciliation. It takes a whole community. It's going to take Canada to heal this brokenness that we had throughout our lives. Miigwech. So this area here is dedicated to the children that never came home. We also have a book that was released before the Kamloops, before they discovered the 250 children. So there's stories in it's called Stories from the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So it's right here, and I think it was written in the year 2000. It's this one here.
They're very small rooms, but
Yeah, it's very
you
small.
want to go in. Like the other room has a small metal bed, probably about the size of our
This next one.
our bunk bed. But I remember those types of beds being in the infirmary, because I got chickenpox when I was at Brandon, and to stop me from itching, from scratching, they tied me hand, feet, spread eagle on the bed so that I wouldn't scratch. That's how they treated us. They're not very humane.
A bed like that one.
A bed like that one, just like that. Yeah.
So this side is dedicated to the Residential School Museum. Residential schools. On the other side is the cultural rooms, showcasing how we lived, and also the most current lifestyle that we have. So this is the cultural room. We have cultural room A and B. We just, this was just donated over the weekend. This is owned, I still have to put the display and the information about it. This was donated by an individual. It was owned by a minister that ministered to people way up north. And it was given to him. It was specifically made for him. It's all hand sewn. This is Wolverine, and inside it's all beaver pelt. So it's really heavy.
Yeah, we're in here. This is our
Yeah.
cultural room. Oh, okay.
And then I want to talk a little bit about the buffalo skulls. I don't know if you've ever seen this picture. Okay, so behind this story is back in, I think, 17 or 1800s. It's on the internet, and I just found out about this about a month ago. That back then they almost wiped out the buffalo at the time, so they were selling these, sending them over to England, and selling them. And what they were making out of this, they were grinding it up, crushing it up, and making it, if you ever look, it's fine bone china. They made these, this is what they were made into, fine bone china, if you look in the bottom, and made in England. So that's why I have the little plates, and it says fine bone china, and it even has a number in the bottom. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah. And we just learned that there may have been a buffalo jump.
There might be a buffalo jump in Long Plain, just along the Sunboyne River. They discovered some buffalo skulls. And just to the back of you is the outfit that the burgundy outfit was worn by a former chief, and it's really significant because it was worn at the first signing of the land claim settlement, the first land claim settlement for Long Plain First Nation. So this was worn, so it's historic. And this is a grass dance outfit that was worn by former chief Dennis Meaches. It was the very first grass dance outfit that was gifted to him in his younger years, and he donated it to the museum. And this is a Burdle Residential School. This must have been an early picture. I went to this school one year for grade 7. So I think back then the parents, because they probably had horses and probably didn't have vehicles, they would camp outside of the residential school so they could visit their children.
We'll just catch glimpses of them because the visits were highly supervised as well. Almost as if we were criminals. Yeah. Or they were afraid of what we tell our parents.
This is my grandfather. I lived with him in this house. They built a house, a 2-story log house. He was a runner, a messenger for Dog Creek all the way to Swan Lake, and so he would send messages and carry messages throughout the communities and just tell people about births, deaths, any other news that he had to relay to the community. So, and he was also a gifted medicine healer. And I lived with him for the first 6 years of my life. I lived with my grandparents and my parents. So I'm really blessed to have known him. And there's a new hotel coming up at Madison Street in Winnipeg. I don't know if you know about it. But anyway, the emblem that he has here, if you go on the side of the building, they had to ask permission from the family. And there's the 4 Thunderbirds, and then the circle is here. So if you go look in the back, it's his emblem. So I'm so blessed to have known this man, my grandfather, and to have that emblem on the hotel. It's just, yeah.
Just that you were saying that this is on the back of the school?
It's going to be in the back, on the side of the new hotel that's in Winnipeg that Long Plain owns.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be. It's on the side. I saw part of it, and it's the 4 Thunderbirds and the circle. So it's carved in there, I guess. Yeah, right into the building. So, yeah.
We are gathered here in Treaty 1 territory today. We are hosting this event from beautiful urban reserve of Long Plain First Nation. Behind us stands the Portage Residential School, a fitting setting for our Honoring Our Children media event today. Today's event has been organized to share information about how we will be working to honor our children who passed away while attending residential schools. I acknowledge all the elders, survivors, chiefs, the Premier of Manitoba, the Minister of Reconciliation, presidents, the media, the children and the youth, and all dignitaries who have joined us here today. Before our live stream began, we had a pipe and water ceremony from Elder Dave Daniels and Linda Daniels of Long Plain First Nation. We also had an opening prayer from Inuk Elder Mata Tagak. Today is a very special day, and it's been planned by First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. As part of the planning committee, I want to acknowledge my colleagues who have been working hard to plan an event that celebrates the survival and the strength of our beautiful and diverse Indigenous cultures. Now I would like to invite Inuk Elder Mata Tagak to light the kulik for us. She's going to attempt to light it. It's quite windy here on site today. So while she's lighting the kulik, I'll share a little bit of information with you about it in case you don't know what it is. It's an oil lamp, and having a kulik was vital to survival in the Arctic. It was a source of heat in a very harsh and cold climate. It provided light during the long, dark days when there were 24 hours of darkness, and it also provided a way to cook food. Seal fat was used to light the oil lamp, and Arctic cotton was used as a wick. The flames were small but constant. I just want to thank everybody for coming out today to join us for this announcement. I know everybody has busy schedules, and I want to thank all the elders and survivors who are going to share with us today.
Because of the wind, we're having a bit of a issue lighting the hudlik, so have patience with us. It will be lit. It's meant to be.
I'm going to introduce you to a Dene drummer. The Dene people are from our most northern First Nations in Manitoba. And I would like to welcome Dallas Denton Kazi from the Lac Brochet First Nation. He's traveled 10 hours to be with us here today. And so I'd like to just ask that you give him a warm welcome. He's going to sing an honor song for us. Masito Dallas, for sharing your voice with us today. It is so good to have you here. I am now honored to introduce you to Elder Ernie Daniels. Elder Daniels is a former chief and a well-known elder in the community of Long Plain First Nation. He has agreed to provide an opening prayer for us. I also believe he's a former student of this school behind us. So I just want to welcome you, Ernie.
Thank you, Melanie. Chimigwech, the kid noam. Wa Nishnabe wa Amubiad. A beautiful scene out there. I bring greetings on behalf of my community of Long Plain, as well as the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe people of Treaty 1. And I thank you for being here, and also this is my first time I've ever experienced to be with the Inuit and the Métis in one gathering. So it's a very historical event for me today. I'd like to acknowledge our knowledge keepers. There's Dene here, the Dakotas are here, the Crees are here, the Ojibways are here, the Métis are here, Inuit are here. Miigwech, thank you, beautiful day. I'm going to acknowledge also to thank my brother Dave and my sister Linda for doing the pipe and water ceremony this morning, as well as the fire keepers that started the fire over there, as well as the people that sang songs with their drums. Chimiigwech, thank you very much, especially Mr. Hall from Zagin. Melanie just mentioned a while ago that this is the former regional school site of Portage Prairie. Today, you are experiencing, touching, feeling of all those regional school people that went to school here, from the north, from the west, from the east, from the south. They came here. And a lot of them have passed on to the spirit world. But there are a number of us still surviving, still survivors. And I'd like to thank whoever organized this event for acknowledgement of those people that passed on. And we cannot forget the ones that never made it home, that are buried across Canada in sites like this here. We cannot forget about them. A lot of those are my relatives also. So thank you very much. Whatever the announcement is going to be made today, I'm sure it has to do with the children that never made it home. Since my brother Dave did a ceremony, my sister did a ceremony, that was the opening prayer for all of us here today. So with that, Chimiigwech, have a good day.
Miigwech Ernie Daniels, for sharing your time with us and your words. I know he answered a lot of calls in the planning process for this event. I'm really sorry about the wind. It's giving us a few difficulties, but there's nothing we can do about that. At least we have a sunny day, right? I am now just going to ask Mata if she can come back and just say a few words about the kulik.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks everyone for your understanding as well. We lit the khullik, but it won't stay lit because of the wind. The khullik is meant for indoor heating and lighting and drying clothes and for cooking. That's how my mother used the khullik, and it's used that way where we come from in Nunavut. So we lit it, it stayed lit for a few minutes, and so to honor this ceremony for the residential school survivors and the children who didn't make it home. We had a tiny light for them. So thank you very much for your understanding and for your patience with us. Kuya Namig, Egosi.
I just want to echo what Ernie Daniels said earlier. You know, it's been a really long time since I planned an event that had Inuit, Métis, and First Nations representatives, and it's been a really beautiful experience because it's wonderful to learn about the different cultures. And I just want to reemphasize for people who don't know about Indigenous people that, you know, we're distinct peoples. First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, we are very different from each other, but we all have the commonality of being colonized. So I thank everybody from these communities for being here today. I have two musicians with me on stage here who are going to share a Métis honor song with us. At this point, their names are Gary Lapine and Johnny Dietrich. I hope I'm saying that right. So you guys can go ahead.
Are we going to be plugged in?
That was beautiful. Thank you, Gary and Johnny. Now I'd like to introduce you to our Métis elder, Linda St. Cyr Sarek, who will provide us with a prayer.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to offer the opening prayer for this event. I want to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Please join me as I invite the Creator to bless this event. Creator, we come to you with very heavy hearts as we acknowledge the innocent children who continue to be found in unmarked graves on residential school sites such as this. We pray for those who have been devastated by this situation. We remember the children we never met, who lost their lives at the hands of evil people. We hold their families in our hearts because their lives have been forever changed by grief and loss. Creator, please bring them consolation and comfort. Surround them with our prayers for strength. Bless the survivors and heal their memories of trauma and devastation. Give them the courage to face the days ahead. Help us to respond with generosity in prayer, in assistance, and in comfort to the best of our abilities. Keep our hearts focused on the needs of all who suffer. Let us love and support each other during these difficult times and beyond. Creator, there is so much that needs to be done, and we thank you for the strength you give us to continue this very important and heart-wrenching task that is before us. We praise you, mighty Creator, for your love, your mercies, and for every gift you bestow upon us each and every day. And we say thank you silently and aloud. This is my prayer for you all. May God be above you to bless you, below you to guide you, behind you to protect you, and inside you to give you strength and joy for all the days to come. Amen.
Thank you, Elder St. Cyr Sarek, for the prayer. For the final prayer of our agenda today, I will now welcome Dakota Elder Eleanor Elk to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eleanor Elk. I'm from Wepuzakawakpa, Sioux Valley, Dakota Nation. And I'm very honored to be here to experience this wonderful event. And I come here with mixed feelings. I come here with a lot of emotions, but I'm happy to see everybody, a lot of nice smiling faces. A lot has happened, especially over the past year, but we as Indigenous people, we need to go on. Indigenous people are strong with their prayers. I've heard a lot of prayers this morning, and this is what keeps us going. We need to stay focused with our prayers because it's only the Creator that will look down upon us and guide us and help us with whatever that we need to face throughout the day. And remember, my good friends, remember to pray always for the unknown, because we never know what's going to happen throughout the day, tomorrow, the many tomorrows that are going to come. So this is how we walk as Indigenous people. Tukashirawa kanta kai to kudi toa hitwaga dechika wite uhina jipi unka chante wastea ake distina chante shid kata kutena iwohda kaptena taya heched uhi apte ukia dokita uhibna ugama kaltan utahipe Hanayetaya hatchet. Tukdeo nataku was take the hatchet at Jada, Awachi. We chota Ahana si tete iwicha chubato kiti ewi chape. Kat hadiba na ugai yoti iki ompe. Kaito na wauncha kaya zanip ta hetchet na nakuich. Wadaya kena ku si tete wichang helping na ukitako saping na. Taku aste chara ampetu yohi na. Tukte na taku unkioste ta hetchet na tukasida ushunki mea. Dweida yoti iki unktis ni hetchet. Kadetchet wahina zi kamija unchimakida eita. Taku tenas camping na tawa tayai echiriaik ta hena echet ushi hoi chichia. Tena hichi tuye mitaki api. Mitaki oats.
Yeah? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Elder Elk, for joining us and for sharing your words with us. And she's going to share a little bit more with us shortly. So we're going to move on to the next portion of the agenda, which is hearing from our First Nation, Inuit, and Métis survivors of residential schools. So I'm going to ask the survivors to start making their way to the stage. And we're going to just hear a little bit from each of them. And then we're going to hear from some of our political leaders and other dignitaries. So the first elder that I'm going to introduce you to today is someone that I've had the great honor of spending time with. Last year I was able to spend time with a number of First Nations elders as I was recording their stories about what it was like to go to residential school and some of the reflections that they have on their experience. And it was my great honor to sit with Elder Betty Ross from Cross Lake, Manitoba. She's a strong voice for advocating for survivors, and she actually has shared her stories in a book called Sugar Falls. It's a graphic novel, and she also has a chapter in a book that came out last year about the Assiniboia Residential School. And I'm very pleased that Elder Betty Ross agreed to be with us here today, so please give a warm welcome to Elder Ross.
Oh, hi. Hi. Tansin tu temak. Tapi menenita kan anus gagit sigisigag. Epe mama wiyak. Menenita mo inugiste. Mistayetos kata mago magagiwan na yagok. Awasak. Pukoy teutse. Maga miset mos kita miskawawag. Miset aspin. Kisko sowag. Ati tinstapawanawag. Minatit no chimik. Kinekowag. Maga isukas kitak. Kikantunawananak. Mos kapagisinano umagatus katamak. Kisigegon. Sige mat siwin umagatus katamak. Maga mos egut kakipisinano. Awasime pugitatus katamak. Miskawakowe. Nisnano temitsiramak. Umisintitatus kanan. Kutak pisim, tumigawin ay kutetan tewisiwean. Maga muna kutak agikipitsina na uma. Pukukitom, kitawisiagok, awasak. Kita si poetetsik. Eugwanima. Mawas kagistenita kog ceremony kay Tonyawak. Miskawako euge awasak. Michet.
Ako po ko naman, mawas kami kaya kasuga ne panikan naman ceremony. Kito am kita mina kiseman tu. Awas sa tato kaya miskawagok. Tapoy makikisi. Anus kakikisi kako mauta. Kape pita ko siyak. Nista nisong gimasken residential schools. Ako minapek day school. Kagi ka kota gigawiyak. Mitoni na ninang giga ko itsistas koti gawin. Inukuk. Agaw sintayin ni Megawian. Kagi nagay ko nagay mas kami gawian. Ako maanggi mas sineni na. Ayaw sa kagi sip mut yan, kagi paisip ako at gawian. Sugar Falls at sigate, wani ma. Ntatsi muin. Ano usapat si Itani wan? Kindergarten to a university. 2011 na ni kagi sipwet tatagan ni ma Sugar Falls. Ispanigo ego. Ayamita mo kisa simisak. Sige matapwe na ni ma. Kagi siya ko at tagigawiyak. Ako magamina. Mistake kita ni mute na anus. Truth and reconciliation kahit sigatig. Magapugo tapwe inigan. Tagakwe kiskenita mak. Emos reconciliation. Moni nang kiskeniten kaya ko nung reconciliation kahit sigatig. Mego setus katamana ni matapwewin. Ewa ko pugo kwes tamagit tagi astek. Umatapwewin. Ntutawigog, tato kagi sapus kagik, residential schools. Ego tayo makemis ka man, ego tagay peta man na matapwewin. Ako ego tau si kagi umatsi si puweta na ano, kanatamag, reconciliation kay sigatek. Tapoy na nas ko man, anus kagi sigisigag. Misete peta man, umisisi ay imiwi na. Kaki miniguagi seman tu kita pasita ko taski. Kakwemis kakista kita yamuin. Gusto po ko kagisusugi kapawin ng taski. Apasita ini kawin na nanepewis eh. Kawin na kika nanepewi kon. Kagi siminis kiseman tu kita yamuin. Apasita. Apasita ini, mito ni kagayan kwes kanipawin. Kwes kapamuta na skik. Tati mina tsik mina kitsawasimisak, yawapi ko ni magkitsawasimisak. Wista wow, kita mas kawiya pumute siguta skik. Ego tausi, apasita ini uma, kita yamiwin. Awas simegi kasawen itagusin. Kiseman tu awas simegi kaminik. Kego ana. Kita mas kawigapawian, taski. Tapoy ni minenitin gitom, epe nakiskata ko kanus kagit sigisigag. Epe watsiye mittagok. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, government officials, Premier of Manitoba. I'm so honored to be standing here today as a residential school survivor of 2 systems and 1 day school. It is my honor to be here today to try and shake hands with everybody. This is a beautiful day, and we have so much work that needs to be done. So much work that needs to be done. Once we find the unmarked graves, we can't stop there. There has to be ceremony upon ceremony upon ceremony, because we need to take back our children, the souls of our children, back to Creator. And that's what I was talking about in my first language today. There has to be these, I don't know how to call these ceremonies, but they're very, very special ceremonies that need to be done after we find our children in this generation. And again, I'm so honored to be here today, to be able to greet as many people as I can. Kusani, kami sa weni mi guwagi seman tu, umagaisip bute kutaski, kitawaste ki mes kanawaw, mina kitawaste ki tegati sikiwek. Thank you very much, Kusani. Kinanasumit na.
Ekose, Elder Ross, I'm very pleased you were able to join us today. I know you have a very busy schedule. I have a couple of housekeeping notes that I wanted to share with you. We're working to secure those flags at the back there. I just wanted to make a note that, you know, some of the things that will be said today may be triggering for some people. So I just wanted to share a 1-800 number. It's a 24-hour national crisis line for anyone who needs support related to the residential school issue. And the number is 1-866-925-4419. I also want to note that we have emotional supports on site today. Some of my colleagues from MKO are here. They're at the back. Maybe you could give a wave. They're wearing bright neon green, so you can see them. So if you need to talk with anyone to debrief or get support, you can approach Gloria or Teresa. Teresa is actually a residential school survivor herself. I'm not sure about Gloria. And we also have a number of supports on hand from the Anish Corporation as well as the Wase Healing Center. And I believe that many of those support people will be seated by a sacred fire on the next yard over. And many of you will have received an offering of tobacco in a small orange cloth. And if you're wondering what that is for, it's, you know, one of our traditional medicines in our First Nations culture, and elders say tobacco always comes first. So we always, you know, if we have a prayer, we will offer our tobacco to the Creator. And many of us will put our tobacco fires in the fire, and we're taught that the smoke will take our prayers up to the Creator. So, you know, if you want to take a minute and offer any prayers, you can do so at the sacred fire just over to that side. So I'm now going to introduce you to our next survivor. It is an Inuk residential school survivor. And her name is Erica Samuktuk, and I want to welcome her to the stage at this time.
Hi, I'm Erica Samuktuk. I was born in Chesterfield Inlet, where there was residential school, and I started my school when I was 4 years old, and it was, it's kind of difficult to talk about it, but I'm happy that I got invited to come here, and it's nice to meet other people that are survivors, and kaya nami kahit ito sa mga tatamaw ng inuktiyo, alanay, we got to meet other people too that are survivors. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Where you went to?
I went to residential school in Chesterfield, and let's say Joseph Bernays School, and I hardly talk about going to school because I didn't enjoy that school. I had a hard time, but I have kids and grandkids now. I survive. I enjoy being with my family. Thank you for inviting us to come and talk to you people, and I'm happy to be here. It's my first time to talk about this residential school. It's kind of hard for me to talk about it, so thanks for inviting us, Inuit people. Kuya Nami, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Erica, for sharing with us. I would now like to introduce a Métis survivor, Two-Spirit elder, and knowledge keeper, Charlotte Nolan.
Thank you. Dancy, Bozu. Ainista, Nipa Wiskap, Skulka, you Square, Equa, Mikasumas, the Tim and Pimitat, Equa, Charlotte, Mikazido, them, Red River Valley, Dochin, Tastawiniao, Utipimeswak. Greetings, my relatives. I introduced myself in the names that I walk with that were gifted to me. Stand Strong, Eagle Woman, Red Horse Running, and Charlotte. And I'm from the Eagle clan, and I'm a Two-Spirit Métis woman. Today I stand here representing those we've lost, but also those who are here. All the children that are in care across this nation, they need a voice as well. And it's time that we come together as a nation and we realize the gifts that we've been given by Creator, our children. When I walked in this building this morning, and I've walked in a few of these schools, I realized that we can't change the past, but we can come together and change the present so that the future of our children will be a good one. I thank my sisters who spoke for the words that they shared. I thank all the other survivors I've met across this country for their strength, their endurance. This being 2022, I realize that our people, our Indigenous people, have been here for thousands and thousands of years. And we've survived everything that's been put in front of us. And we will continue to survive. We will continue to flourish. We will continue to raise our families, to raise the future generations in a good way. For me, ceremony is what gives me comfort. And now that we're going to be neighbors with Long Plains, we've got some land over here, we want to work with the community as relatives. 100 years from now, these buildings may not exist, but the memories will always be in our heart. How we move forward is up to each and every one of us. I was asked last year, September 30th, about truth and reconciliation. What did it mean to me? And I was holding a document of 12 pages, which documented 19 years of my life. And I said, I want the truth to be known, just like the truth of all the ones who were buried and were lost. Then we can begin reconciliation. But it has to start with each and every one of us. So I want to thank you, my relatives, for coming out today to be part of this celebration of the good work that's going to take place. And I ask Creator, grandmothers, grandfathers, to bless each and every one of you to guide you home safely to your loved ones. Can I ask them to Chimigwich, Marcy?
Thank you, Charlotte, for sharing with us today. For our final survivor of today's agenda, I invite Dakota survivor Eleanor Elk back to the microphone.
Okay, mitaki api derwahina ziga. Wichoya oge epekta gaba. Ame se tako tisana. Tukteona wichasta wiamakantia ukachne kapta hetche namisa tana epekta. My friends and my relatives, the people that are here, I stand here with mixed feelings, emotions. The issues that our people are facing, especially after the discovery of the 215 little graves that were found It opened up a lot of hurt, brought back lots of memories for a lot of people. It didn't need to happen, but it did. There's so much trauma that we carry as Indigenous people. We still suffer from it. We need the government to start focusing on what we are trying to do, to try and fix whatever has happened, because it was them in the first place that created these, to send us away so as we can be Washichu, to be white, to forget our language, our ceremonies. But did it happen? No, it didn't. We still have our language and our ceremonies. And I've always said, no amount of money, no amount of apologies, I'm sorries, is going to heal anybody. It's not going to heal my spirit. what needs to happen is to go back to our ceremonies and start healing ourselves. So much pain we still carry. And our children, our grandchildren see this, and they too are hurting. When these discoveries of the little bodies were made, I cried. I cried so hard. And my daughter asked, I shared it with her. I said, that could have been me. I went to residential school. I am a survivor of 3 residential schools, but the most traumatic was the one that I went to when I was 6 years old. I had no knowledge of the English language. I only spoke my own Dakota language. And I remembered that they tried so hard to make me speak the English language. They washed my mouth with soap. They punished me, they strapped me. But did they succeed? No, they didn't. I still have my language, and I'm going to carry it for as long as I can go on. Sometimes I think our government lacks empathy. Our people see that, and how do you think it makes them feel? You know, they've done so much way from the beginning of time, centuries ago when they first arrived. And I'm sorry to step on toes, but you know, this is the truth. Somebody has to say the truth. You know, and they try to take everything away from us. So now, what they're trying to do, it seems, you know, they're trying to cover up. Cover up what? Our pain is real. The experiences we went through are real. We didn't make anything up. I'm not standing here and making up this story. I went through it. The government needs to see what we went through. They need to understand, hear, and to feel what happened to us. I don't want to be so harsh, but you know, as I stand here, every time they say residential school or discoveries are being made, it hurts. It hurts my heart. I hurt for other people. I hurt for the people that have gone on, you know, with nothing. We see so many homeless people all over the place. What about them? Their parents went to residential school, and they can't even make a claim because their claims are rejected because there are deadlines. And you know, and they went past that deadline. And I feel that isn't fair. You know, so does that mean that they're forgotten? I think, you know, our survivors, our children, you know, and our grandchildren need to be helped in some form or another, because we suffered enough, not only through residential school, but because of a lot of other things. A lot of people still live in poverty. Look at our drinking water. Look at some other reservations. You know, They live in horrible conditions, and we don't need to be living like that. And please, please, our higher up people, take these and do something. Whatever amount of money that you're going to offer, it's not going to be enough. What we need to see happening is we need to have our own healing lodges or community centers where our own can help our own. We don't need anybody from the outside to come and help our people because they don't understand. We have enough spiritual leaders or spiritual advisors that can help our own people. They are the ones that we need to start using. And my friends and relatives, this is all I have to say. I can go on, but we have a time limit. So I'm going to leave it at that and think about it. A lot of people, are still hurting. We don't want people to hurt anymore. We need to stand strong now and start helping each other. And I hate to
Thank you, Elder Elk, for sharing with us. I think we're hearing some common themes come out today, and one of them is unity and the importance of us working together. So I just want to echo that, and I think that this event is a reflection of the unity that we have on the issue and the grief over residential school and the unmarked graves. I'm going to let you know that we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda, which includes hearing from a number of political leaders and government representatives. So I think some of them will be making their way to the stage. And while they're doing that, I want to let you know that there is a car parked nearby. It's a Hyundai with the license plates HUM 865, and your lights are on. So you might want to go and turn those off. And also, we did recognize that there may be some diabetics with us today. And if there's anybody who needs sugar, we have some snacks at the back as well as water. So they're just at the back tent close to the Crescent Road there. So, if you need any snacks, feel free to go and help yourself. And we will be having a feast of traditional food after our program. So I hope that everybody can stay for that. Thank you. So I'm just going to share a very short story with you about myself and my family. My grandfather actually attended this residential school. I'm a member of the Long Plain First Nation. My mom was raised by residential school survivors until she was about 8 years old. And then she was removed from her family to another family in Oregon, USA. She's part of the 60 Scoop. And so unfortunately for me, I did not grow up with any access to my culture or any connection to my First Nations family in Sandy Bay or Long Plain. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago when I received a random message on social media from a beautiful young woman in Nebraska, Omaha, saying that she was my first cousin and she had tracked me down using Ancestry.com and other research methods. And she wanted to come to see Long Plain, and she wanted to come and meet some of her family. And so one of the things that she did was she organized a couple of events where she would be able to meet her family, and she asked me to come along. And, you know, one of the people that I met there is with us today on stage. She's actually our new chief in Long Plain First Nation, and I had heard her name several times, and I was always wondering who she was, and I wanted to meet her. So when I saw her there and found out that she was my cousin, I was really overjoyed, because it's just so wonderful to be able to meet our families and to be reconnected to our communities. And I want to give a warm congratulations to my cousin Kyra Wilson for becoming the first female chief in Long Plain for many, many years. So I'd like to welcome Kyra to come and give some remarks now.
Good morning. I believe it's the morning still. I just want to say miigwech, Melanie, for that beautiful introduction. I'm actually the second female chief here in Long Plain. So we had Marlene Peters was our first female chief in Long Plain First Nation. So I always want to acknowledge the people before me, and also previous Chief Dennis Meaches sitting in the crowd here has done a lot of work. So I just want to say miigwech for all the work that you've done here in Long Plain. So I also have my daughter here, Paige. I'm always wanting her to be involved in the work that's happening in the community, whether that's in Long Plain or even outside of Long Plain. You know, there's a lot of important work that we do need to be including our children. You know, it's very important that they see what is happening and learning from that. So I just want to say once again, miigwech for being here, everyone. Welcome to Long Plain First Nation. We are on Treaty 1 territory. I also want to acknowledge, you know, our relatives, the Métis, Inuit, Cree, and Dene people here today. I'm very happy to see, you know, everyone, you know, be a part of this historic day, and also be a part of, you know, the history that we see behind us here with the Portage Residential School. You know, there's a lot of history with all of our schools, and you know, it's a sad history, and so I am always, you know, wanting to honor and acknowledge our residential school survivors. I also wanted to say miigwech to Premier Stephenson and you know, some of the ministers that are here today. I'm really happy to see the work that you're wanting to do and are doing when it comes to First Nations people, Indigenous people here in Manitoba, but also across the country. And so I want to also acknowledge our elders, our knowledge keepers. You know, Ernie Daniels has done a lot of work for Long Plain First Nation, and we have many elders and knowledge keepers. Dave Daniels, there's just been so much work prior to me being elected in, and I'm so very honored to be standing here today alongside my daughter, who I'm hoping will continue on with that work once I move along on my path and my journey. And so when we look at you know, the Portage Residential School, you know, it has been I guess named a national historic site, and it's important that we are, you know, hearing the history of the survivors and their stories and what that looks like for themselves, but also for their families. These, you know, stories and experiences impact generations, and so when we look at all of our survivors, you know, you've really, you know, built that strength within our families. You know, you had to go through a lot, And my grandmother and her siblings and her generation, had unfortunately had to go to residential school. And so, I know my grandmother is here with me today, and I know our relatives that have passed on are here with us today, and they walk with us every day. And so I want to honor that and acknowledge that. And so we also have Lorraine Daniels. She's our executive director for our National Historic Site here for the Portage Residential School. We also have a board of directors. And so the work that they're doing is very important when it comes to, ensuring that people are able to see, the history with this school, but just schools in Canada in general. So it is very important work that you're doing, Lorraine. I'm not sure where you are, but I just want, oh, hi, Lorraine. So I just want to say miigwech for the work that you're doing, as well as the board of directors. And yeah, thank you. So it is my hope that we will get the support from whether it's the province or the federal government to continue on with this museum, this National Historic Site. We have so many people coming here and wanting to learn the history. And so it's something that I am passionate about. My grandmother was a very important person in my life, and I know all of our survivors and our families, held a very important role when it comes to, the experiences and the stories we have within our families. And I also want to say miigwech to, our elders and, community members that have shared their story so far. It takes a lot of courage to come up here and to be vulnerable and to show and share, part of your story. And I know it's only a small part of that story, what you have experienced at residential school. So I just want to say thank you for being strong and courageous to come up here and share that story. I also want to mention that Long Plain, we began searching our grounds here, for any unmarked graves or burials 3 years ago. And it was because of a lot of the work that's being done in our community right now. We have different, buildings that have come up recently, and so we're always ensuring that we are doing things properly and letting Spirit guide that work and allowing ceremony to guide that work. And so we have begun those searches in our community, but we haven't done that here. And I know that we are going to be starting that work, and we have our team, Lorraine and the board of directors and our committees that are going to start looking at what that's going to look like for Long Plain First Nation and the Portage Residential School. So I just want to say thank you, everyone that's here today. And I'm just so grateful and happy to see, as Melanie stated, the unity of being here for our survivors and for our children that didn't make it home. And I just want to say miigwech to everyone. I love you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you to my new favorite cousin. I would now like to welcome the spokesperson for Treaty 1. He is also a recently elected chief, and his name is Mr. Gordon Blue Sky. And Chief Blue Sky, welcome.
Howdy, how are you? I'll be the first one. Morning, how are you? I'll be the first one to try to speak up here without my bonnet flying off. Just wanted to say, bonjour, wasigijig dijankas makanak dodem, waskanabi wisibing unji. Welcome to our beautiful Treaty 1 territory. I think it was about a year ago we first heard about the the discovery of the 215 graves in Tecumloops, British Columbia. And I know a lot of us in the crowd here also felt that in our hearts at the time. You know, I think a lot of us took the day off just to, you know, grieve with our residential school survivors. So I just want to say, acknowledge our residential school survivors here today, the ones who didn't make it as well. And just like to give thanks for the opportunity to be here today. But even myself, I'm a rippling effect of the residential school survivor. I'm a 60 scoop survivor as well. You know, and I've been sharing that story as far as everywhere I've gone. Is, you know, they've tried to eliminate us through a number of ways and methods. One of them was our residential schools, and following that, like myself, they started the 60 scoop. And for me and my sisters, we were only 2, 3, and 4 years old when we were apprehended from the Broken Ojibwe Nation. And from that point on, we went to Winnipeg and onwards into the States. And I ended up growing up outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we made our way back. And again, like I heard the survivors say here earlier, we're strong, we're resilient, and me and my sisters supported one another. You know, there was a time in my life where I felt like the only Indigenous person, Anishinaabe person on earth. And it was a very lonely time for myself and my sisters, but we stood strong. We made our way back here, and like you said, I'm the more recently elected chief in my community. So 27 years ago, I came home here and started to learn more, not only about what happened to me, but also about these schools and what the impacts that they had and the rippling effects to people like myself that had to fight a lot harder in life to make a way back here to home, to Treaty 1. And I'm proud to be, and I'm honored to be a spokesperson now for the Treaty 1 territory as well. You know, one of the things that I think about when it comes to reconciliation, it's taking the amount of resources that it took to uproot our children, planes, trains, automobiles, and remove them from their homes, from their families, for the Muslims and their Kulkums in my case. And they took them all over the world. They took them away for these residential schools. I think reconciliation for me isn't only lands and acknowledgements and memorials, but it's also putting that same amount of energy and resources into making it right. You know, I'd love to one day take my young daughters, I was blessed with 3 daughters, to a school or have an opportunity to attend a school with the same amount of resources to repair our language, to repair our culture, you know, to bring our elders into those classrooms to sit with them like we once did. So that to me is reconciliation, and I hope to see the province and the federal government collaborate to make those opportunities available for our young people, for our children. You know, we got a generation of children coming up right now that aren't impacted by the residential school directly, that aren't impacted by the 60 scoop. You know, those are the ones that I'm talking about that need to go forward into the future. I got to do my healing, as does everyone up here on the stage. But I really do think about them, and I really do think about the opportunities and the resources that they're needed to bring themselves out of this dark history, this Canadian history that we live in right now. So that would be my dream, to see announcements about a school being put in place that does the opposite effect. So with that, I'll say Kichi Miigwech. Thank you.
Miigwech Chief Blue Sky, thank you for sharing a little bit of your story. Most Indigenous people know that we're affected by the impacts of the residential school, the 60 scoop, the CFS system. I think that, you know, one of the things that's good about today and about the ongoing conversations we have is that we really need non-Indigenous people to stand with us as our allies. And, you know, just listen to how these residential schools impacted our people, because the impacts play out every day on the streets. And people wonder why there's a lot of crime, and there's, you know, we're overrepresented in a lot of systems, and it all stems back to the residential schools, unfortunately. And so on that note, I just want to say that I'm very glad that our Premier of Manitoba is here today so she can hear these stories firsthand and talk to some of the people who've been directly impacted by the residential schools. Ms. Stephenson became Premier in November 2021, and she is the first woman to hold this office. Honorable Premier, I invite you to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie, and thank you for everyone for being here today. And I just want to start by thanking the survivors who shared their stories with us today. Each and every day we learn from them as to how we can help them and how we can learn from them through this horrific time. And so our message today is we are here for you, we are here with you, and we are here to learn from you. Thank you for sharing your stories. We're also here today to remember those children who didn't make it home. And Grand Chief Satie and I were sitting just out here earlier, and we had one of our elders come up and hand these seeds to us. And you'll see them on the ground around you from the trees around us today. And he said, you put them together and they look like wings. And they're the wings that represent those children that never made it home from residential schools. And I just want to thank him for pointing that out to us today and how beautiful that was. And thank you for sharing those with me. So good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here with you all today on Long Plain First Nation. It's great to be back here. But before I begin, I also want to give my respects and gratitude to the elders. We're represented here by First Nation communities, we're represented by the Métis, we're represented by the Inuit. There's been several speakers previous to me who have recognized that it's wonderful to have everyone together in the same ceremony together. We want to recognize our elders, our survivors, our families, and the youth, both who are in attendance today. So I want to acknowledge that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabe, Dakota Oete, Dene Sulene, and Nihunawak nations. We acknowledge that Manitoba is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis. We acknowledge that northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, with Inuit and Métis peoples in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. Today we are honoring the children who did not return home. They remain on our minds and in our hearts. Our thoughts are also with the survivors, families, and communities as they continue to mourn and heal while they carry out the heartbreaking work of finding their missing children. We recognize that this is an extremely difficult and emotional and demanding task, and it requires support and collaboration from all of us. Last June, our government announced our financial support for the critical work to identify, investigate, protect, and commemorate the children who died attending residential schools and their burial locations. And today, we are proud to move forward together with this important healing process. We recognize that this work must be Indigenous-led, which is why we are flowing our financial investment directly to key Indigenous governments and organizations to enhance resources, provide community support, and to build structures that prioritize families and survivors. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to work collaboratively with Indigenous leadership, families, survivors, and communities as they find children with the hope of bringing them home. Every child matters, and it is our duty to help First Nations, Inuit, and Métis reclaim the dignity of these children as human beings whose ties with their loving families and communities were tragically severed because of the residential school system. I am grateful for the opportunity to be here and to be able to listen and to learn from the truths being shared. I'm also joined by many of my colleagues from the Manitoba Legislature from both sides of the House today, and we recognize them for being here. And I'd like to thank also the Planning Committee for their tremendous effort to bring us together at this special gathering. We know that, I just thank the staff and everyone who put everything together today. It's an honor to be part of this incredibly meaningful and historic day for our province. Thank you. I'm honored to have been a part of today.
Miigwech Premier Stephenson for joining us today. I now invite the Interim Grand Chief for the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs to the microphone. Mr. Cornell McLean is also the Chief of Lake Manitoba First Nation. Grand Chief McLean, welcome.
Bonjour, Tansei, Anin. It's a good day today here in Long Plain First Nation. I thank Chief Kyra Wilson and her council for inviting me today, to support the residential school survivors. I heard a lot of stories here this morning, but there's a lot of stories that are untold, from our young people. I remember when I came last year here, when the first of the findings of the 215 graves, it brought back memories of, what happened here at the school here in Long Plain. In every community, the Pine Creek First Nation, is searching for graves. Saging, all across Indian country, we're looking for our lost ones, right? And it shouldn't take, I guess, for us to grandstand against the government of Manitoba and the government of Canada to make something happen, to give us those dollars to look for our lost ones. I think it needs to happen right away before, anything, and reconciliation needs to happen. There's a lot of our lands that are lost, due to flooding. No ferries in York Landing. The government is responsible for that. The treaties end at the water. I think it's important that that's recognized right across Indian country. There's a lot of things happening. I'm really honored to be here. I thank the knowledge keepers and everybody, all the people who prepared this event to make it happen today. It's important for us. It's important for us to heal. I see the opposition leader here, NDP, Wab Canoe. It's good that he's here today. He recognizes what we're looking for. It's pretty tough on the old headdress here. But with that, I'll leave it there, and miigwech, and thank you for today, and God bless.
Miigwech Grand Chief McLean. I would now like to welcome fellow Long Plain band member Jerry Daniels to the stage. Mr. Daniels is the Grand Chief of the Southern Chiefs Organization.
Bonjour, we magiduk. Miigwech gijimani tunum gum, kogi mama kodish nakas. Kagunshtag dunji, banasi du dim. I want to thank our Creator for another beautiful day. My grandfather always said the wind is one of our grandfathers, and we're supposed to speak to it when we pray, and for directions. And it was an important part in the beginning of our prayers is that we acknowledge the change that comes with it, the change in the stories that are told. It was a reflection of the true reality that we had experienced. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge my relatives. My Uncle Ernie Daniels, thank you for the prayer. My Auntie Linda Daniels as well for your prayer. And also my Uncle Dave Daniels. Thank you, the family, Grace. I spent time with many of my relatives just building forts behind their mother's house when I was very young. And I was privileged to have that. Very privileged to be able to have my family with me. And it's important for us to acknowledge that. I want to just acknowledge our leaders, our chiefs, Premier, Mr. Canoe, all the children that are here, and the media, everyone who is a part of turning the chapter, turning the page on a very, very terrible history that has continued today to impact the lives of our children, impact the lives of our people. Indigenous people in this country, in this province specifically, are still dying 11 years earlier from a healthcare system and a colonial system that does not look after our people. And so it's very important that leaders acknowledge that the legacy of residential schools continues every single day, that our children are experiencing them every single day, that our people, when they're walking in the stores, are experiencing racism every single day, and the experience that the same values, the same mindset that created residential schools still exists today. It hasn't gone away, and it's not going to go away for a very long time. But it's important for leaders, not just chiefs, but all leaders, mentors, our young uncles, our young nieces, who are mentors to our communities. We're in a very tough situation when land, millions of acres of land, continues to be dispossessed. To change that chapter, we continue to be dependent on government transfer payments. That dependency makes us vulnerable, and that needs to change. And so I applaud leaders who are focused on true reconciliation and the true history of what happened and what is happening in this country. I want to thank all of the survivors who are here, the ones who did. I want to acknowledge the children who have not made it home as we reflect on the tragic history. To the survivors who are here today, thank you for your bravery, for your courage, and we honor your resilience. As a father, I reflect on my son, my nephews and my nieces, and their ability to grow up with their traditions, with their culture, and have the opportunity that the 150,000 children who did not make it home. You know, I know we're here to acknowledge the funding and the importance that we're doing the work of finding our children who went missing. It will never be enough, and I know the elder had spoken about it. You'll never compensate for the lost language. You'll never compensate for the lost love, for the broken and almost disrepair that many of our people have lived their lives and have passed on without feeling that love. You know, I look into the eyes of my family, my child, and I see that, you know, there was a lot that we have lost out on. But we will ensure that supports are available for survivors. And as we launch the new Survivors Healing Supports Program, and through our mobile crisis response team, many of whom are here today, we will continue to honor the works of our relatives, to establish commemorative gathering spaces and monuments through the organizational subcommittee. And we will co-develop the right approach to find and memorialize our children and promote truth-telling and healing in our traditional ways. This work is hard, it is painful, as we recognize the number of children who may be found. But we remain committed to working with our treaty partners and to moving towards the future together. But we won't forget, and we will continue to work very hard and very aggressively to transfer that millions of acres back to control of First Nations, to control of our people, so that we can be in control of the future and hopefully change that 11-year life expectancy gap. Because had we changed that 20 years ago or 30 years ago, maybe my grandparents would still be here. Maybe many of our leaders would still be here. So let's not forget that residential schools and the values in the minds of many of of our settler relatives still exists today. But we will work and honor the veterans, we'll honor those who fight every single day. We thank you, and all of our mothers and everyone who's really worked to change the narrative. We thank you. I want to again acknowledge my uncle and my aunties and my Auntie Lorraine, who's in the back there. You know, I lived with all of my aunties. I don't know if you know that, but I lived with every one of them. I stayed with them for, you know, a time, because that's how we were growing up. And that's where the strength comes from. It comes from watching and listening. And so, again, I think it's important for us to continue to spend time together and continue to share the knowledge. And thank you. It's an honor to serve as Grand Chief. I want to acknowledge Chief Cairo Wilson. Glad to see that we have, you know, female representation in our community of Long Plain, and also recognize Treaty 1 and Chief Blue Sky, who's a great friend of mine, and happy to see young leadership, progressive leadership, who we can work together to change the narrative in this country. Miigwech Tikit.
Miigwech Grand Chief Daniels for sharing with us. So the next speaker that I'm going to introduce you to is someone who's very special to me. His name is Garrison Settee, and he's the Grand Chief for Manitoba Kiiwetinoong Okimakanak, and he's trying to teach me Cree, but it's a work in progress. So welcome, Grand Chief.
Bonjour, niwagumaga dito, kapitsin minenta muma, ebijan kinin, nimnem dami wab minaguk, nogom, how mitakwape, upida, washte, lenete, salutine, nitisanak, niwagumaga na kitatamiskat na wawagagin na wanutsagi sigak, pemawat situak, ekiskisto tawago kitiniminanak iwagumagan nawak, utagagip mi sapos kagik animisuin na nasko mo ni sa pe mawachituag o pe usamet tiag anutsagi sigag. So kita tas kumit now itisanak. It is an honor for me to be here, and it is also humbling to stand before this institution that represented the colonization of our people and the assimilation of our people and the attempted annihilation of our cultures, our languages, and our identity. But I also want to celebrate the fact that just before we got on this platform, we heard the prayers of our elders and our people still praying in their languages, that the regime to destroy our languages did not work. It has failed, and I celebrate the resilience of our people on this very historic day on Treaty 1. And also I want to acknowledge the Long Plain Anishinaabe people for allowing us to assemble to acknowledge and honor the children that were taken from our First Nations. I want to thank the Chief for addressing us and also making us feel welcome here, and also the elders from this nation. I want to say miigwech for allowing us to convene and to address a history that is very dark, a history that is very painful. But I'm also optimistic that we can begin our healing journey today as we continue to reconcile with the people that were going to bring harm and detriment to our people. Today we can stand strong as the original people of this land, because they have done everything to destroy us. They have done everything to crush us, but we are still here as nations. We are still here with our languages, our ceremonies, and our identities. So I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for everybody that are here, but I want to acknowledge the survivors that are here. It is because of you that we are here. It's because of your strength and your power that we stand here. And we just want to honor you for the things that you've endured and the things that you have suffered. I want to say thank you for being strong for us, for being strong for the future. Because of you, we survive. Because of your strength, we survive, and we will continue to survive. So I want to say thank you to everyone that made this gathering possible. Thank you to Melanie Ferris for being part of this team from MKO. She's done a lot of work to put things together for us. So thank you for helping us honor our children today. And I'm so thankful that the survivors can begin to heal now. They can begin to move forward now, because I believe the time for reconciliation has happened and the time for healing has begun. But I just want to echo the words of the Premier and Elder Fred Stevens, who said that the wings that are flying around here are the wings that are representative of the children that did not make it home. But let's bring them home. Let's take them home. We owe it to them. Ego sa ginanas kumit now. Hi, hi.
Eko se Grand Chief Seti. I just want to share a very brief story that I've been able to travel to a lot of the northern communities with the Grand Chief. And one of the most moving experiences was visiting a graveyard in Bunabonabee Cree Nation, and I want to acknowledge the Chief Richard Hart is here from that community. And there's actually a memorial for some of the young people from his community who attended this very school, and they were going home for their summer break, so probably right around this time of year. And unfortunately, their plane crashed in Winnipeg. And you know, if you want to go and take a look at the memorial for them, it's in the next yard there. So I always think about that community whenever I come here and wonder what could those young people have done if they had not been taken to this school. So our next scheduled speaker was to be Regional Chief Cindy Woodhouse from the Assembly of First Nations. However, she is en route from the airport, so we have a representative for her, and that's Ernie Daniels.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you again, the organizers and all you special guests, all you special people out there. My person I work for and with is Cindy Woodhouse. She's our regional chief from Manitoba AFN. She's here somewhere. Is she here? There she is. I don't have to speak now. Oh, yeah. There she is. But I want to acknowledge someone in the crowd here. Dennis Meaches, where are you? Come here, I'm back. She made it. I want to acknowledge I wanted to acknowledge former Chief Dennis Meaches, who's done a tremendous amount of work to do with the buildings and maintaining the site and assisting the museum over the years. And he's always included me as a knowledge keeper when he was a chief. So I want to pay that back to him. I want to acknowledge him, and I want to include him with what's happening. You chimney gwech, Dennis.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, you're our regional chief, Cindy Woodhouse.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and you know what a beautiful day it is. I'm sorry I'm late. I was flying in from Ottawa. What time were we up? 3:30 Manitoba time, and thankful to make it here just on time. And I was praying this morning that we would make it on time, and so I'm so grateful to be here for this important event. I want to thank the elders, Kichimiigwech, for starting our gathering in a good way, you know, and our knowledge keepers. I know knowledge keeper Daniels doesn't appreciate being called elder because he says he's not old. So there you go. But I want to say thank you for welcoming us here today, and to all of our knowledge keepers and our young people and our people. You know, your guidance is indispensable to everyone as we ground ourselves spiritually and morally to reflect on the suffering and the loss of our innocent children who did not make it home, to proceed to meet our collective obligations, to find, identify, and commemorate them, and to determine as best we can what had happened to them. This sacred work must begin by honoring the lives and the spirits of our children, and by acknowledging the abuse and the unnecessary suffering that they had to endure. All of us here know that the so-called Indian Day schools were explicitly designed and operated with the intent to eliminate our cultures and ultimately take all of our lands, contrary to the spirit of treaty. The colonial target of choice was the most vulnerable Indigenous children in all our culture, political, and individual diversity. It cannot be said too often, Indian residential schools were designed to slowly and relentlessly kill our cultures by taking the Indian out of the child. That project wreaked horrible damage, but fortunately it has not succeeded. The forcible transfer of children from one group to another is a form of genocide. International legal scholars have affirmed many times. This crime is evidenced in many ways, including the extraordinary number of children's deaths and disappearances in these institutions of oppression and assimilation. We are here today to express our commitment to the truth. We are here to talk about the values that must guide efforts to advance reconciliation and justice. We are here to press for continued accounting for the crimes and cruelty imposed on our children, their families, and their nations. Crimes, neglect, and cruelty imposed on tender children for no more reason than for their race and ethnicity. Deaths and disappearance happened without accountability. Deaths and disappearance happened without notice to parents, families, leaders, and elders. Deaths happened without proper record keeping or providing the opportunity for our people to honor and properly mourn their children under any real sense of human morality. Neglecting, punishing, and tormenting children because of their ethnicity and imposing degrading concepts of racial superiority is so obviously wrong. No longer can anyone plead ignorance of what had happened. We all must acknowledge that Indigenous children were taken from their families and nations by force of racist laws, not to truly educate them, nor to treat them with kindness or concern. No, our children were taken under laws and by institutions that had no real interest in our children's welfare. Our children were taken to serve vicious colonial object, to disappear our nations in order to get all of our lands and our resources. The wealth and well-being that Manitoba and Canada enjoy today grew out of this hard truth and out of all the soil of this land, watered by the tears of our children. Nothing can ever change the truth. So what is reconciliation? It's a reckoning by governments and institutions responsible. It is action like this, critically important, funding from the government of Manitoba, a government which has assumed to itself some authority over justice in this territory, which is our territory. It is acknowledgement by provincial and federal governments to their roles and their eagerness to see a clearing of the plains through blatant racism and slow roll of systemic discrimination and violence. But there can be accountability, and we all need in full, transparent reckoning for the suffering of innocents. It has been said many times, and I will say it again, we cannot advance reconciliation without facing the truth. I thank the Government of Canada today and the Government of Manitoba for contributing to this next step of our journey to seek both truth and reconciliation. Our duty to the innocents taken from us absolutely requires that we find their remains and finally honor them with all kindness, respect, and cultural and spiritual protocols. Today we are taking an important step together to uncover the truth and get closer to laying to rest the children left for far too long in unmarked graves that we can all help do. Again, I appreciate the provincial government for acting to help get us the much-needed place of love and healing. There is much more we can do together, and I look forward to contributing as best I can to our collective search for truth and reconciliation. To the spirits and souls of all children, whether murdered or missing, we love you deeply, We honor you, and we will do our very best to find you. We will hold you close in our hearts forever. Miigwech.
Miigwech Regional Chief Woodhouse. Our next speaker is the Chief of Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, Chief Jennifer Bone. Welcome to the stage.
Hamitakiapi. Oyate wachia piwi imakiapi. Wipazoka wakpa hechitu wahi. Good afternoon, relatives and friends. My name is Jennifer Bone, Chief of Sioux Valley Dakota Nation. I want to begin by saying Piramaya to thank you to the elders for your beautiful opening prayers this morning and setting the tone of healing, reconciliation, a better future for our next generation. I would like to acknowledge my ancestors, my grandparents, and my parents, the late Chief Robert Bone and Brenda Bone, who were both survivors of residential schools. And to all the children who were forcibly removed from their homes and the ones that never returned. We gather here today because of the injustices we suffered and because we are committed to uncovering the truths of how our Dakota Oyate and our fellow nations were forcibly placed into institutions and subjected to genocidal policies by the Government of Canada. Our work on finding our missing children began in 2012 by Chief Vincent Tatchin and Council, along with Catherine Nichols, who at that time was working toward her master's and is still currently working on the project and working towards achieving her PhD. Today, under the guidance of our elders, we continue to investigate what happened to our loved ones who never returned home. But it wasn't too long ago when the province of Manitoba wasn't committed to working together. In 2016, Sioux Valley Dakota Oyate asked the province to support the following activities as part of locating the missing children. Find and protect the first school cemetery on private property, extend fencing and erect headstones for the graves in the second school cemetery, and investigate potential unmarked graves on the school property. Our request was declined and no assistance was provided. The provincial and federal governments were well aware of the specific challenges we were facing at the time and continue to face to this day. It was only in 2021 when Canada's dark history became headline news in the media that governments decided to act, recognizing and committing to reconciliation efforts. In 2016, Manitoba and Canada had the opportunity to act, to be a leader in change and reconciliation, but for whatever reason, Sioux Valley Dakota Oyate's voice wasn't heard. The province has made a commitment to work together. Sioux Valley Dakota Oyate acknowledges the financial contribution by the Government of Canada towards Indigenous-led approaches to finding and memorializing our missing children. We require active and sustainable government support to achieve long-term solutions. Today is an important step in building the foundation for the work that lies ahead. We are asking the province to provide access to all residential school records held by the province and to take a proactive role in supporting all aspects of the investigation. The province needs to update outdated legislation in regards to cemeteries, heritage, and justice. Private property rights continue to impede the rights of Indigenous people to protect their burial grounds, and there must be new policies to support the protections of cemeteries held on private lands. At the end of the day, we are simply asking that all Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, are able to expect that the burial grounds of their loved ones remain protected and that they have a voice in decisions made about their protection. As elected officials, we are the leaders of our communities. We are in a position of creating real change. Our community, elders, survivors, and university partners are committed to finding our missing children, to the investigation on the cemeteries and unmarked graves at Brandon Indian Residential School. Sioux Valley Dakota Oyate thanks the elders and survivors for their significant effort to move towards reconciliation. There is more work to be done to bring truth to the atrocities inflicted on the children who are parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Thank you for the opportunity to share on behalf of my nation and our project, an important work that is being done. Ritakiwas.
Thank you, Chief Bone. Chief Bone welcomed us into her community. Well, she actually welcomed us to the residential school there in Brandon last year, and I thank her for sharing her time with us that day. We held a ceremony there. There's children from all over the place buried in that area, including in the middle of a campground. It's quite sad when you go and see where these children are buried. So that's it for our First Nations representatives, and now we are going to move on to our Inuit representative, our spokesperson for today. And Marty Ford is the president of the Manitoba Inuit Association, and I would like to welcome Marty now. Thank you, welcome.
Ulukut. My name is Marty Ford. First of all, I'd like to pass on a message from our elder Mata. She had got the kulik lit, and it burned for about half an hour before the fuel burned out. So I was there to represent and bring light to our children. I'd like to acknowledge my ancestors, my Atatatsiak grandfather, Harry Ford from Baker Lake, and my Ananatsiak, Martha Lyle from Cambridge Bay in Labrador, my Atata, Henry Ford from Baker Lake, and Nana, Margaret Spencer from New Brunswick. They've all passed on to the spirit world. I am the president and board chair of the Manitoba Inuit Association, the representative organization for Inuit beneficiaries living in Manitoba. I want to acknowledge that Manitoba is located on the treaty territories and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Anishinaabeg, the Dakota Eote, Dene Sulin, and the Netawak nations. We acknowledge that Manitoba includes the homeland of that is located on the homeland of the Red River Métis, and we acknowledge that northern Manitoba includes lands that were and are the ancestral lands of the Inuit. We respect the spirit and intent of the treaties and treaty making and remain committed to working in partnership with First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples in the spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration. I would like to acknowledge Chief Kyra Wilson of Long Plain First Nation, Kianamik, for inviting us to your territory. I would like to acknowledge and say Ulukut to all of the First Nation Grand Chiefs and Chiefs, the President of the Manitoba Métis Federation, the Honourable Heather Stephenson, Premier of Manitoba, the Honourable Alan Lajimodier, Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations. Thank you, elders, for your prayers and your ceremony, starting us off in a good way as we meet today for the announcement and remembrance. I want to acknowledge the courage and the strength of all of our survivors of the residential schools who have traveled to be here with us this morning. We surround you with peace and hope that we will reunite our stolen, missing children who never made it home to their families and their communities. Greetings to all of our Inuit, First Nation, and Métis performers. Watching your performances make me emotional as you show us that our Indigenous culture, our language, and our ceremonies have survived, and we are making it stronger than ever. The Manitoba Inuit Association is the organization that represents the Inuit beneficiaries living in Manitoba. There are 60,000 Inuit living in Canada, with the majority living in the 53 communities spread across Inuit Nunangat, which is the Inuktitut word for our Inuit homeland in Arctic Canada. Now, nearly 30% of Inuit live outside of Inuit Nunangat, and this percentage is growing at a rapid rate. Manitoba is home to approximately 1,500 Inuit and accommodates approximately 15,000 medical visits per year from the Kivalliq region of Nunavut. This number continues to grow every year. MIA and our Inuit charity organization, Ikiukti, provide Inuit-led services by Inuit for Inuit to improve Inuit outcomes in education, healthcare, housing, food security, mental wellness, and support those impacted by missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls, and walk alongside those who are re-traumatized from lived experience of residential schools as our intergenerational survivors, first, second, or third generation survivors of Canada's darkest chapter. Today, we gather at the former Portage Indian Residential School. Like so many residential schools erected throughout Canada, it is a site of pain and abuse. Our children, taken from their loving families, suffered years of abuse and cultural genocide. Our most vulnerable, our future leaders, targeted to kill the Indian and the child and extinguish our languages, our culture, and our deepest connections to the land, our peoples, and our families. Today, we are here to say no more. No more of our mothers, our sisters, our aunties, our nieces, and our daughters being murdered or stolen. No more abuse of our relatives in hospitals or detention centers. No more of our children to be taken away by colonizing systems perpetuated by justice and child welfare agencies that do not understand who we are as Inuit or what our challenges are today, coming to southern locations in Canada, escaping poverty, inadequate housing, violence, and limited employment opportunities. But we can't do this alone. The pandemic has taught us all that we are in this together, and the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the 231 calls for justice of the National Inquiry on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls rely on the premise that we do not have healing and reconciliation in Canada with ourselves. It can only be done with all of us together, and this requires reconciliation in action. The Manitoba Inuit Association is pleased with today's action in the announcement of funding from the Province of Manitoba's Department of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations that support Inuit in Manitoba so that we can build capacity in our families and our communities as we locate and repatriate our stolen children, bringing them back to their families and to their communities to commemorate their lives and bring healing and peace. We continue to find innovative avenues to enrich and invigorate economic development that is balanced with individual and community wellness. We continue to grow Inuit-specific programs and services that assist Inuit achieve wellness and maintain our cultural identity. We hope we can continue to have your support. Kianamik. Thank you. Ekose.
Thank you, Marty Ford, for sharing those words with us. So I'm now going to introduce you to the Minister of Residential Schools for the Manitoba Métis Federation. His name is Minister Andrew Carrier. So please, you're welcome to the microphone. Thank you.
Merci, Melanie. As mentioned by Melanie, my name is Andrew Carrier, and I'd like to first say la Fédération Métis du Manitoba, le gouvernement officiel de la Rivière-Rouge, nous sommes très fiers d'être ici aujourd'hui pour reconnaître que les familles ont plusieurs dollars de perdu les enfants d'après l'expérience mal de l'expérience de l'école résidentielle. I was just saying that the Manitoba Métis Federation, as the national government of the Red River Métis, we're invested in the healing of our families who have lost loved ones and experienced harm because of the residential and day school system. I'd like to thank Chief Wilson and Council and the community of the Long Plains First Nations for welcoming us and hosting this event in their territory. I only wish that the Great Manitou wouldn't give us so much wind, as it's caused so much chaos up here. I'd like to thank Elder Linda St. Cyr Sarek for your opening prayer. I also would like to thank Elder Eleanor Elk and Elder Mata Taka Ivalaka Palmer for their opening prayer. I also wish to recognize that all the elders, such as we heard this morning from Elder Nolan, and we also have our Métis Elder Barbara Bruce out here, and all the other elders, thank you for your knowledge and your support, because without our elders, we wouldn't have our language, our culture, and memory, the community memory that we need to recognize. I want to acknowledge all of the residential school survivors and their families here today. On behalf of the national government of the Red River Métis, I offer greetings to our First Nations and Inuit leadership and all members of the Indigenous community present here today and online. I extend greetings to Premier Stevenson and Minister Lejeune-Moudier and all the provincial and federal representatives that are present today. I want to thank our fellow Cabinet Minister Alfred Anderson for joining us all the way from Selkirk as well. Today, we reflect on those children who are lost and the necessary work required to bring them home. We also reflect on the long-term intergenerational trauma of survivors and their families, including the loss of identity, culture, and connection with our community. For us, the Manitoba Métis Federation, we need to go back to our community and ask some very, very hard questions in the memory, to raise the memory of what has happened in the past, such as who went to the residential school, who never came back, what are their names, how old were they, where did you live at the time, and did you know where did they go? This information was never given back to the families that lost their children. They left, they were taken, and the parents were left unanswered questions about their children that never came back. Some of them came back after 10 months. Some of them came back after several years. Unfortunately, some never came back and were lost to society. And for what reason? Did they not care about our children? With the creation of the First Nation, Inuit, and River Métis Council, our government will finally begin to answer the many questions our families and nation have been asking for a long, long time. And thank God for the Children Reconciliation Commission calls to action 75 and 76 to bring this matter to the light. The funding provided will assist us in our work to search for our children under the Pikiktiwak Les Esparations and bring back our Children Spirit Home program. Our first task as government under this program is to conduct research and work with families who have lost their loved ones and to determine where the children went to school, as I mentioned earlier. My friends, my relatives, my message here today is one of love. I am mindful that today is a painful reminder to those who lost their loved ones. Know that we will do everything we can to bring them home and honor them and bring them rightfully the respect that they deserve, and to help our family gain the closure that is necessary to the healing process. I offer my gratitude to the Council of the Planning Committee for your dedication to making this event a true testament to our commitment to one another. Merci, miigwech, à la famille. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Carrier. So we're now going to have our final speaker for this part of the agenda, and then we're going to move into the final, like the entertainment, the song, and the dance. And then we're going to have our feast for anybody who is hungry. So our next speaker is Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations, the Honorable Alan Lajemoje. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, Tansei Bozu. Today it's about the children. It's about the children who never returned home. It's about supporting communities in their healing journey. It's my honor as Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Northern Relations to be here in Long Plain First Nation, Treaty 1 territory. This is an incredibly important historical, emotional, and spiritual day. And I want to acknowledge and thank the elders and survivors who shared their stories and knowledge with us, and to my fellow dignitaries who spoke before me. It is very meaningful to be with you here today, to come together as Manitobans, as community, as family. Today is about the children. It's about remembering and honoring those who died at these schools. These children mattered, and they are not forgotten as we hold them in our hearts and in our minds. To the survivors and families who lost loved ones to residential schools who are here today, please know that my heart and thoughts are with you. The work to locate, identify, protect, and commemorate the children who died at these schools is difficult and emotionally taxing. I commend the communities who are actively searching for the missing children on their strength as they endure this difficult process. Together, we remain fully committed to this work as we follow the leadership and guidance of First Nations, Inuit, Red River Métis Council, survivors, families, communities, governments, and organizations on the Canadian residential schools investigations. This includes Indigenous-led, culturally relevant, and trauma-informed resources being provided. These supports are available here today for anyone who may need them. I would like to thank those who are providing these important services. We recognize that this difficult work cannot be done alone, and it will take time. It requires sustained effort, attention, and collaboration. Once again, thank you all to those who were involved in bringing us together for this important announcement, especially the Planning Committee. It is truly an honor and a privilege to be here with you on this historic day. I am grateful to be part of today's event and for us all to continue our learning journeys. The truths, the knowledge, and the wisdom spoken today will remain with all of us for a lifetime to come. Today, we ask each and every one of you to trust in each other and to support one another. There are spirits trapped here on earth seeking justice and to find their way home. We cannot let them down. These were innocent children, hoping for a chance to return home to the loving embrace of their families. They were stolen from their families, and their lives were stolen. They still ask us to find them, to do what is right, and to do what is needed so they can rest peacefully. Together, we can do this. We can do it for the children. We can do it for the families. We can do it for the communities. We are Manitobans. We are community. We are family. Merci. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Minister Lajemoje, for your comments. So this concludes the formal remarks for our agenda. So I'll now let the dignitaries know that they can exit the stage. And we're going to remove the chairs, and then we're going to have some a dance performance. Thank you. After the dancing and the round dance, we're going to have the feast next door in the Kishki Makwa Center. So while we're having the chairs removed, I will just share the menu for the feast. And I want to thank Barb Esau and the Bannock Hut for taking care of the feast. And also thank you to the Inuit members of our planning group for helping us access traditional Inuit country food. And the menu items are going to be roasted bison, wild rice, hominy corn, fry bread and baked bannock, Arctic char steaks, both cooked and raw, char candy bellies, caribou, beluga muktuk, and beluga miku. And there's also a dessert of rice pudding topped with blueberry sauce. So we're just going to have a word from Grand Chief Garrison Sati before we do the performances.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Give her a big hand. She's been an awesome job being our MC. And I've invited the Premier of Manitoba and also my colleague, Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, to help me. I was asked to do this on behalf of the Provincial Advisory Group. We would like to acknowledge MKO's Melanie Ferris for organizing this event and for her strong ethics and commitment in the advocacy of Indigenous issues. On behalf of the province of Manitoba, MKO, and all of our partners and all of our chiefs, and also a Southern Chiefs Organization and the AMC, we want to thank you with this honor of bestowing this blanket upon you for your hard work and your dedication in honoring our children. And I'm going to ask the Premier to help me and Grand Chief Daniels to place this around her. Come and stand here. Thank you, Melanie, from Long Plain First Nation, Melanie Ferris. Savo. There you go.
Okay, well, that's a awesome surprise. Thank you so much for this honor. I have received a star blanket only once in my life, which was when I graduated university, and there actually was when Jackie Daniels, she came out to Ottawa and presented me with a star blanket when I finished university, so this is a great honor for me. I need my notes, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so, and I also just want to thank Grand Chief Seti. I've worked with him for 3 years now, and it is my great honor to do this work. And also for all of the chiefs that I work with. I know some of you are in the audience here, and I hope I get to have a little chat with you, perhaps at the feast. It's always good to see you, and I'm always happy when I see your number on my phone, calling me to ask me questions and asking me to help you with something. I love to help the chiefs and the First Nations. I believe this is my calling, so thank you so much. So we are now going to have an Inuit drum and dance demonstration. And the performer is named Joachim Ayarok, which I'm sure I'm not saying his name properly. Maybe he could introduce himself. And I'm not sure where he is. Here? Okay, come on up. Do you want to introduce yourself so I make sure everybody gets your name?
Koyanamik, thank you. My name is Joachim Tayagat Ayawak. I went to residential school and I am a survivor. And I'm proud of it. And we should be all proud of being survivors of residential school. And before I start the drum dance, this is not a drum, it's a tilauti. And that's in Inuktitut. And the one my granddaughter has is a little one for the kids. And this one was made for my grandson 17 years ago, and they still play it. And Tamani Kama, my Ergotak, I call her, and my granddaughter is gonna do a song, and when I'm playing the kilaut, she is not gonna sing, she is gonna ingok in my language, and your language is ingek, singing. So that's what my Ergotak is gonna do. Her name is Kathleen Tayagat Ayawak.
Koyanami. So the song I'm going to be singing is called an Eskimo chant. Just gotta put the paper on. Ready? Okay. Aiji akusin uvanga asin. Oop. I messed up. Sorry. I'll start over. Aiji akusin uvanga asin. Haiji akusin uvanga ani ulit. Haiji akusin uvanga asin. Haiji akusin uvanga ajisin. Aiju akusin uvanga ania. Aisha akusin uvanga akisin. Aiju akusin uvanga ajusin. Aya akusin akusin. All done.
Koyanamik, thank you, and have a good day.
Melanie just stepped out for a second, so we are going to move to the next item or piece on the agenda. I believe we have Inuit throat singers. All right. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Hello, there we go. Hi everyone, my name is Zian Manaknalup, and this is Alitra Samartuk. Today we'll be demonstrating Inuit throat singing, but before I do, I would like to explain what Inuit throat singing is. Originally, it was a form of a game that Inuit women would perform while the men were out hunting. And how it would work is that the two women would stand face to face. And what they would do is they would repeat sounds from the land, or a hunter's breathing, or an animal noise. And they continue in this pace, either increasing the tempo or adding a whole new sound, just to try to throw the other one off. There is also a little story about where or how Inuit throat singing came to be. And the story is that a mother and her children were at home, and her husband went out to the land and he didn't return. So her and her children were starving. So what she did was she went to the water's edge and she started mimicking animal noises, attracting smaller animals to her so she could catch them and feed her children. So this first song we have for you today is called The Love Song. The love song originated in Aqviet, Nunavut, and I was told that it was a form of song to soothe your children to sleep. Okay, so the next song we have for you is called Nunavut. And in this song, you'll hear two words spoken. One is Nunavut. And Nunavut in our language translates to our land. And the second word you'll hear is Sa Ninivut, which means our people. So it's our land, our people. Up, 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 one second. Up, 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 up. Up, 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 So with Inuit throat singing, there's a lot of breathing. And it comes from the diaphragm. And what happens is, in our throat, there are two valves. So when we speak, we open our valve. But what happens with throat singing is the valve stays closed, and you're pushing air through it, creating the sound. Sorry. The next song we have for you is called The Hunter. And what it's supposed to sound like is a hunter breathing while he's running after his catch. Okay. The next song we have for you is called Iu'a. And Iu'a is our Inuit syllabics. It's kind of like our ABCs. Okay. So the last song we have for you today is called Kimrolopik. And Kimrolopik translates to cute little puppy. It is known to be one of the oldest throat singing songs and also one of the hardest. There's actually a little story behind this song. And the story goes is that this grandmother saw her grandchild very sad. And she went up to her granddaughter and asked her what is wrong. And she said that she was sad because she had found a frozen puppy. And so her grandmother sang the song to her to console her. Ready? Koyanami, thank you guys.
Are you guys all done? Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you to our Inuit throat singers. Let's give them a round of applause. I think that, that's a very powerful cultural practice, and I'm glad that it survived so we can enjoy it today. And another powerful practice is dancing. And I believe we have some really cute dancers for you today. They're called the Canoe Métis Council Youth Dancers. And they're going to be accompanied by two musicians. So I would welcome you to come to the stage. And I believe the musicians are Gary and Johnny. Thank you. Thank you, Métis dancers. I'd just like to introduce each one of them. Their names are Rocco, Bijou, Jada, Francisco, Lacey, and Carlitos. Let's give them a round of applause, please. We really wanted to include children in today's event because we just wanted a reminder of, you know, the people who we're here for today. We're really here to honor those children. So next, we're going to have our round dance. However, we're going to have a very quick presentation from MLA Bernadette Smith to the Portage Residential School, to Lorraine Daniels. She's the Executive Director. And then we're going to move to the next line to do our round dance after she makes her presentation. Thanks, you're welcome.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to acknowledge all of our survivors that are here and those that haven't made it home. And, you know, we're here to acknowledge the work moving forward. And a very special group of students located in the North End from R.B. Russell created a monument for the survivors, but also for this beautiful place so that people would never forget what happened. They approached me a couple of months ago. They've been working on it for about a year. When the children came to light, they wanted to do something. And a very young girl named September Beardy, she's an artist. She started sketching this many months ago. And a lot of youth from that school worked on this monument. So I got a hold of Chief Wilson and invited her out, and Lorraine came out with her, and you're going to see the beautiful work, the tears that were put into it under the direction of Mike Johnson, who's the welding teacher at R.B. Russell School. He also, a few years ago, you would remember, did the Tina Fontaine monument with a couple of other students it's now in the Tina Fontaine Center on Selkirk Avenue. It's very impactful. So I'm going to invite Lorraine to come up and speak about the monument, and you're going to see yourself just how impactful and how beautiful and how honoring it is. Miigwech.
Good afternoon, I'm Lorraine Daniels. I'm a residential school survivor. Been to 3 residential schools for 7 years. And Chief Olson had invited me to go and look at the monument, and I didn't have the words. When I first saw it, I had no words for it, but I just broke down in tears. I was so emotional and overcome. A reminder of being in residential school for that long, and also thinking of those that are incarcerated, because it was like a jail. And it hit me so hard that it took me all afternoon to get back to my normal state, and I just cried. It really hit me. So for those of you that are residential school survivors, it's a memorial of what we went through, but it's also to acknowledge those that have not been able to go home, that are buried, and also that this is a reminder of what has happened, and that a memorial to those that are thriving, that have survived, and that we are a resilient group of people, and that our children will learn from this, and that it will remain here. And I want to thank the group from CDI from Long Plain who brought this out, and I also want to thank Chief Wilson for taking me there, and I also want to thank Bernadette for thinking of the residential school grounds, where it will remain on the grounds in the Memorial Garden, and this is the beginning of our Memorial Garden for the residential school survivors. So we will be unveiling it shortly. Thank you. Chimiigwech.
So folks can come around and look at it. There's a lot of the history on there.
Folks can come around and look at it. There's a lot of the history. So residential school in 1831 to 1996. I had a little one and then it's been dedicated for the residential school system. We also wanted to make sure there was brick by brick, and then if you'll see going around the tarnishment on it. The top we said we'll start to weather the rest of it out. And then we go around and talk about the 150 meters, and then there's another 150,000 residential schools, and you have a return.
139 of these schools were built across Canada, a national crime. And as you can see, they put bars on there because the rain was a prison for these children. So as people drive across the street, they'll be able to see that. They come to visit the Memorial Garden.
what was it like?
Incredibly moving ceremony today. I think what is so important about this is that it's the First Nations community, Métis community, with Inuit community, and everyone is here together. And that was mentioned several times in many of the speeches today, that many people haven't been, a part of that before, where it's all communities working together towards reconciliation. So very, very humbled to be a part of this.
We know there was a dollar figure attached to the ceremony, but wasn't actually brought up in the ceremony. Can you just tell us what was your mark for this?
Yeah, I think today was not about numbers. It's about people. It's about children. And so I purposely did not mention the dollar figure. It's in the news release. You can see what it is. But I think it's, again, the important thing is that all communities are working together here. And we have to remember those children who didn't make it home. And that's really what this was about today. And then also just listening to the survivors today and their stories. And there's so many more of those people out there as well. And we need to hear and listen to their stories.
And just to be sure, this was 2.5 committed to last June, and now we know how it's going to be broken down.
That's exactly it, yes.
So the Premier, can you explain how that funding is going to work? Is that 2.5 split equally amongst the groups that were here, or is that allocated towards different sorts of activities? Like it's more of an allocated
it's going right
towards
to the
ground?
communities. I believe it's going to, do you want to maybe, Al
Sure.
will break down here.
Right from the start, we thought that this should be Indigenous led. So that's why we had the First Nations, Inuit, and the Red River Métis come together. And as a council, they've decided how that money will be split up and how it will be used. So they take the lead on this. We're providing the 2.5, we're deciding where it will go and how it will be split up.
So then is it up to the communities whether they use it, say, here for ground penetrating radar, or another community say they want to put that towards archival searches? Is that decision made there?
That decision is made on the Indigenous level, yes, with the communities themselves.
So then is the funding split to each community
it's
equitable or equal, or does it depend on what they want to do with it?
That decision was made by the council, and you'd have to ask them how they decided specifically how they're going to split the money up. But it is split up in different increments.
So 2.5 million, I mean, it's a lot of money, but over a lot of people that gets spread pretty thin. Is this a one-off, or is this the beginning of something more sustainable? We heard calls for sustainable funding today.
Yeah, this is the beginning of a long process. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort on a lot of people's part. We've got 18 residential schools in Manitoba that we know of. A lot of those have already started their searches, and once we know the results of the searches, there's a lot more to be done after that. But once you've identified with the ground penetrating radar anomalies, then is it a body? Isn't it a body? Who takes over then? Different communities had children that they lost at these residential schools. And how do we know if it is a body, what school, or what Indigenous community that individual is from? So a lot of work.
Just add to that just for a second. I think what you're getting at, the breakdown in terms of the dollars. So MKO and SCO and AMC, they'll decide for the monies for them where it goes in the community. And I think the breakdown of that is in the news release as well. So you can get the breakdown.
In terms of the reason why we're not getting that release, or we're having an opportunity to ask questions about it.
It's in your inbox. In terms of the way, I guess, cash flow, do the First Nations, Indigenous groups have to apply to the province, or is that money already in hand?
I think
with
it'll
those
be
groups?
left up to those organizations. So like AMC, MKO, and then obviously Métis will decide, how within their organizations how that money will be divided up, because each has their own priority, and so we want to leave that so it's Indigenous led and run.
Yeah, I'm just asking. My question is if the 2.5 million has been given to these organizations, or if those organizations have to come back to the province.
It's been given. Yes.
Anything else, folks?
Thanks, everyone.
Actually, one more. Given today's messaging that money is not enough,
Is there anything else that the government is looking at, such as the suggestion that program deadlines might be prohibitive for some people?
I think we're always looking at ways that we can make improvements to various, programs so we can help First Nations, Métis, Inuit through these very difficult times. We're obviously going to have to work very closely with the federal government on this and ensure that those monies come from there as well. But again, I would say that this is not about money. This is about people. This is about children, and we want to ensure that we don't forget those children. And today is about sending a message out there that we are all communities together here with First Nations community, the Métis, as well as Inuit, and all of us are working together towards the same goal. Thanks, everyone.
I would say that we need more support for not only the ground searches, looking for any of our children that didn't return home. We have so many schools across this province, across the country. And so it's important that we are receiving that support. Just like the Premier Stephenson said, it's not about money, but just coming together and just acknowledging some of these dark pasts that we have, here in Canada, Manitoba, and so it's just really important that we come together to support our communities, our nations, our survivors, and just really honoring those children that weren't able to come home. Yes. Actually, the school grounds haven't been done. So the only ground searches that we've completed is when we're building, anything that you see here within Long Plain, any of our, whether it's our gas bar, our office spaces, our hotel, we've had to do ground searches to ensure that there wasn't anything there prior to building them. So for the school, we haven't done any of that search here yet. So it's going to be a process that's going to take a lot of healing and ceremony and love. And so with this school in particular, we are going to be looking at what that process is going to be for Long Plain and any other communities that had children attend the school as well.
So if I'm just understanding the fact that money is coming, that it's being allocated, a portion of that, does that necessarily mean that you can get out here and start making our own field? Or it sounds to me like it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, there's so much that we have to think about when you're doing any of the ground search. So, when you look at you look at our culture and our ceremonies attached to being Anishinaabe people, we have to ensure that we are recognizing and acknowledging that spirit that comes with the ceremony. So that is the first step, is that we are asking our grandmothers or grandfathers to be here with us when we go through this whole process, because it is going to open up a lot of hearts within our families and our communities. So the first step is ceremony. The second step is just looking at who is going to be doing that work and what is that work going to look like. So there is a step-by-step process that we need to take when we're doing any of these ground searches, but we just need to make sure that we're doing it properly and it's not rushed, and that we are honoring those children that did not